Welcome, everybody. We're so glad to have you. Buick, happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Appreciate
Those of
you.
you who don't know Buick Audra, she is a phenomenal musician, and she also has done some fabulous writing about the process of like writing memoir while writing her songs. She wrote a great blog for Brevity about it. And Buick, do you also have a new album out this year, or am I remembering the album from last year with the patchwork skirt and the diamond on your eye?
I have new solo music coming out, and my band Friendship Commanders released an album in September. So, yeah, just sort of running around between both projects. Thank you so much for the kind words.
You're so welcome. Fantastic. Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Oh, and we've got Rebecca Morrison here too. Hey, Charlotte, will you tell us and have Rebecca chime in on what Rebecca is doing for Craft Talks that is coming up?
Yeah, you bet. So, Rebecca, I'm going to look up the date because I believe it's the end of the month, correct?
March 27th
March 27th,
at 2
right?
o'clock.
Yeah, writing for commercial publications, find the right fit for your work. So, we're really excited to have Rebecca teaching with us for the first time. Rebecca, do you have anything you want to mention about that specifically? It's early bird price
Yeah.
right now, $15. So, everyone should
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I am so excited about this. I started a couple of years ago and just went and just full force for big commercial national publications, and I learned a lot. I've gotten to know a lot of editors, and I'm excited to tell you everything I know and help you, get some of those tools that when we're starting out, we're not really sure of. So um, increase your chances of getting a yes on in big pubs. I can't
And
wait. March
Rebecca,
27th.
I know a lot of people here came to my workshop, Pitch, Publish, Get Paid, which I taught through Jane Friedman, which sounds really similar. And yet I know what you have to teach and I know it's different. Would you just hit like three high
Yes.
points of what you're going to teach that's totally different from what they got if they came to the other webinar?
Yes, mine is much more drilled down to um, finding the editors, pitching the exact essay or reported piece, and I concentrate on the biggest national publications. What I did was I went full force. I published a lot of pieces in 2 years, and I got two agents that contacted me and wanted to represent me. And it was because I really stayed with my beat, got those essays out in big publications that got a lot of eyes. So I'm really going to concentrate on those pubs and how to pitch them, how to find them, how to get a yes. So that's kind of
Awesome.
what I'm going to try to do. Yeah.
Well, we at Craft Talks are super, super excited to have you. So we are still waiting for our guest to arrive, but we're going to go ahead and, wait, here she is. Here she is. Here comes our guest. Awesome.
Also,
So this
Allison,
is
I don't know. Is everyone able to post in the chat? I only see a few things in the chat, which I posted.
Well, we haven't actually invited people yet. Go ahead and please let us know in the chat, where are you coming in from? What are you working on? I'm going to go ahead and hit the mute everyone button so that nobody has to worry about your dog or anything else coming and running into the background. And we are so glad to have you here. Today, we are going to be talking about ChatGPT. And I got to tell you, this episode has been a little bit controversial. And as I'm talking, I'm going to pin our guest and pin Charla and myself. So you may see some weirdness happening. When I promoted this episode on Twitter, I actually had people who like yelled at me on Twitter about, this is a terrible topic and I'm so disappointed that you're doing it and how dare you talk about ChatGPT online. And Charlotte and I were just talking a minute ago and we're like, well, it's kind of like being frightened of the steam engine. It's kind of like being really sad about your buggy whip business. We are going to move into the future whether we like it or not. And so we might as well have some control and some knowledge and some tools for that. So love it, hate it, welcome it, or fear it. I, for one, am welcoming our digital overlords. AI has a lot to offer us as writers when we know how and when to use it. And today's guest is going to tell us all about saving time, saving energy with ChatGPT techniques for marketing, blogging, email newsletters, even crafting pitches. But first, hey, Charla, we heard about Rebecca's upcoming workshop. What else is coming up with Craft Talks?
Yeah, I'll throw some information in the chat about where to find the Craft Talks website because there's so much that's happening. But just short and sweet, the next webinar is tomorrow, and it's a roadmap to revision, make your memoir agent ready. And that's with Katie Bannon. So you know it's going to be great. It's $25 and it's happening tomorrow at 2 p.m. The latest you can register is 1 p.m. So Eastern time. So make sure if you're interested in that to go to the website. Allison, what's happening with you?
Well, like 30 minutes before this meeting, I finished the website for Memoir Proposal Boot Camp. That is coming up in April. Those of you who went to it last year, it was 2 absolutely grueling days. This year, it's 3 days, and we're getting the workbook pages in advance so that we can start gathering information. So it's still going to be intense, but I think you will actually be able to finish writing, I'm going to say 60 to 80% of your actual proposal if you are starting from scratch. And I think you can get a finished, polished revision if you have a proposal that you are starting with. I'm also teaching a webinar with Jane Friedman that she and I are actually team teaching called Getting Past the Gatekeepers. And if you are a novelist, it is aimed at novelists. Hey, Charla, who is our amazing guest?
Yes. It's just
Whoa.
Mabel.
Hello. I think I have your last name correct, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Charla, I accidentally just hit the mute button.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I swear we're totally professionals at this.
I was really excited to introduce Ann Koppuzha, and if I said your name wrong, please correct me. Ann isn't just a writer, lawyer, entrepreneur, and designer. She's a creative force blending her business and legal prowess with the innate passion for innovation. Her mission is to empower forward-thinking entrepreneurs, dynamic creatives, and influential thought leaders. She's dedicated to constructing sustainable businesses that harness their unique talents and passions to illuminate the world. Her holistic approach encompasses legal expertise, digital savviness, and strategic business guidance, all geared toward helping women live happier, healthier, and wealthier lives. Welcome, Ann. So happy to have you here today.
So,
Thank you.
Ann,
I'm glad to be here.
I fear our AI overlords. Charla is already using ChatGPT. Why and how should we be using it?
I wouldn't think of it as an AI overlord, at least not yet. I can't say how it's going to develop, but it's just kind of, it's like, do you fear your dishwasher or your vacuum machine? Like those are tools to help you live the rest of your life, and ChatGPT is like that. It's like a tool to help you. Like I can't live without Google Maps. My life is significantly better because I have Google Maps, and that's what ChatGPT is. It helps you with things that it can process information in a way that humans can. So I don't think there's a reason to fear it at this point. I can't say I don't know what the development is going to look like, but I think it's pretty helpful as a tool.
Yeah, I use it for brainstorming marketing language when I'm building webinar titles, for example. And maybe ironically, I use it to check for plagiarism with my students' work. I also find it's a way to, like a search engine sometimes. I ask it questions I wouldn't normally ask Google. But perhaps you can tell us what it is, Ann, and maybe what it isn't, so we all have like a joint understanding of the tech.
Yeah, out of curiosity, is there a way we can show of hands? If you have not used ChatGPT, can someone put it in the chat? Like, I'm just curious to know you've never, okay, yeah, raise your hand if you've
Yep,
never
you can raise
used
your
it.
physical hand. You can use the hand raise icon. You can signal to us that you are drowning in a sea of confusion. Yep, we're seeing a lot of hands who have never used ChatGPT. Awesome.
Okay, yeah. Great. Okay, that gives me a good sense of where you guys are starting from. So ChatGPT is this tool that basically helps you develop content. So what separates ChatGPT from like Microsoft Word or spell checker is that it could generate the content, whereas previously that wasn't possible. So that's sort of the innovation. Spell checker that you have, I'm sure that you guys have been using that on Microsoft Word for decades. That is an early evolution of AI. And so this ChatGPT is like the latest evolution, but the difference between these two is that ChatGPT can generate content, which before we were never able to do. So that's the big revolution. In terms of like what it is, it is a really good sounding board to like bounce ideas off of. It is really good at helping you come up with like pithy marketing titles and content, anything like that. It's really good at editing your work. It is not good as a writer. It's a terrible writer, which all of you should be very thrilled about. It is like anything, I can like tell from a mile away when something is ChatGPT written because it always uses the same words. It always has the same sort of bland language. And that is obviously not ideal. And it is not a good research assistant. A lot of like, do not trust any facts you get from ChatGPT because it just makes things up. All of these AI systems they have these things called hallucinations, which means they just make up facts. And so be very careful about any facts you get from ChatGPT. Double check it and verify and ask it for the link and go to the source and read that to make sure it's
And
accurate. If
Anne,
you're getting,
sometimes
yeah.
ChatGPT will even refuse to help you. The first time I ever tried it, I was trying to solve a plot problem in a novel. And no matter how I phrased the question, ChatGPT would not tell me how to rob the Metropolitan Museum of Art successfully. It just kept saying, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to tell you that information.
Yeah, exactly.
I once asked it to help me for historical moments where rebellions overtook governments, a specific kind of anarchy, and it was like, we do not suggest that you do this, and I'm like, this is just a creative exercise. I had to really preface it that way before it gave me any ideas. Yeah.
Right. But it is really good at brainstorming things like, hey, help me come up with 5 titles for this webinar or for this blog post or for this email subject line. Like it's great for that. I tend to tell people it's really good for simple things and that are very logical based. And the more emotional and complicated it is, the less helpful ChatGPT is.
So what's the
So-
controversy then behind ChatGPT? If it's just a tool, what are people up in arms about?
I think people, and particularly writers, are very afraid that ChatGPT is going to take over their job. So we're not going to need writers anymore if there is ChatGPT. And I think it affects like a subset of writers, but I think that there's a lot of stories in the world that can't be told by ChatGPT. Like a lot of like I read a lot of memoirs. What brings all of that to light is like the human experience and the human emotions. ChatGPT is a robot. It literally does not go out and live. Like we need those experiences, those stories, like that's what's being told in memoirs and lots of books. And so I don't see it replacing any of my favorite authors or novelists. Do I see it replacing people who write technical manuals for whenever you get appliances? Yeah, it can probably do that, but it's not going to take away the type of literature and memoirs that you all probably write.
Now, somebody in the chat asks, what about other, you're gonna have to tell me what LLM stands for because I am our official ignorant person. But Jeanette is asking, how about other LLMs like Perplexity, which seems to always give verifiable references, Bard, etc. I know we're focusing on ChatGPT. Is there anything we should know about those other options?
Yeah, so those are all great options. LLM means a large language model. And so basically ChatGPT and all these AI systems are trained on learn on LLMs. So basically what happens is that these AI systems take in information through large language models, and then that's how they generate content to you. And so it's in Perplexity AI is great and it has verifiable links, and that it's like people are calling it like a challenger to Google. And so it is much better for discernible facts. I personally haven't tried it, but I've heard great things about it. And then in terms of Bard, which is now Gemini, which is Google's own AI, also, it's kind of like a watered down version of ChatGPT. It's neither here nor there. I used to think it was better for facts, but it turns out it's not. I also need to ask it for links and then go check those links to make sure that it verifies the facts that Bard really says. And I find that the content generation is not as good. So basically, there are a lot of different AI tools out there. Some of them are better than others. Perplexity AI is really good. But if you're new to ChatGPT and you don't want to go and explore all these different tools, ChatGPT is your one-stop shop for generally being the best at a lot of these different types of AI.
So something that really interested me was you say that writers can use ChatGPT to create blog posts and newsletters. So one of the things I like about my newsletter is like it's me, it's me talking directly to people. How can we use ChatGPT without sacrificing our own creativity? Like what does it contribute to the writing process that saves me time and doesn't steal my voice?
So here's what I do. For every blog post I write, for every newsletter, I write it out. Like I write out the topic, or I just write out exactly what I want to say. Sometimes it's bullet points, sometimes it is like a more detailed outline. But I write it out and then I input it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to polish it. And then from there, I like click the regenerate button, which we'll talk about when we do the screen share. And then I do different versions. And sometimes, a lot of the times, the output is it just takes what I've written and like literally sprinkles some fairy dust on it and makes it sound better. And I can take any of the changes that it gives me and say, okay, great, this is helpful or this is not. And sometimes I will definitely like take out words and say, no, I want to keep my original language, use that instead. And so I just use it as an editing tool and it's really helpful for all sorts of things. And that way, like I keep the language or I keep what I want to say in my tone of voice and my very straight in it. The second thing people should do is that ChatGPT has an option, which we'll talk about when we do screen share, is to save different chats. And so I have different chats for like, this is my newsletter chat, this is my blog post chat. And the more I train those chats, the more ChatGPT's output reflects my voice. Because if I'm starting from a new chat, it's going to be very stiff and awkward language. But if it's a chat that I've already sort of honed, then the language is much better.
We have a question in the chat. Is there a way to limit is there a limit to how many words in the questions you put into ChatGPT?
There is a limit for the premium version. It's 40 messages every 3 hours, but there is not a limit for the free version.
And you suggest using ChatGPT to create email campaigns and marketing materials. And actually, you know what? I feel like we should jump to the part where you share your screen because I am not the only person in complete puzzlement here. Because Anne, you are so smart about explaining this. I think it's going to really help if we actually look at it. So I'm a total newbie to ChatGPT. What does the actual process look like? Where do we get this content? Where do we store it to use it? Like, can I just copy paste it into a document and use it later? Is it its own app? Tell us like we're 5 years old.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen. So I think this is going to make it most helpful. Okay, can you guys see this?
Yes.
Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great.
If
So
you can zoom in a little bit, it's just a very small font.
I don't know how to do that exactly. Okay. Yeah, I don't quite know how to do that.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I don't know if that's okay.
ChatGPT does not want us to zoom.
Oh no, is this better?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So where do you get it? I have it as a icon on my thing, but you go to chat.openai.com and you'll pull up ChatGPT. So that's the first place. Okay, let's see. This is pulling it up. Okay, my computer's taking a minute for it to load, but I have this pulled up. So I write this newsletter. It's called News. It shares stories about women and issues related to women. So I'm gonna take this. Okay, so this is what I wrote this weekend. So I started. Okay, this is the original post. So I wrote this in a Google Doc, and I asked ChatGPT to polish this. So it took what I had written and polished this. And it gave me this version. So this is how like it just cleaned up the language, added subheadlines, like made it easier to read, but it kept all the content like basically the same. And I was like, so okay, so this missed a subheadline about how Alabama basically said they're not going to enforce this law. And so it added another one about this. It added that subheadline that I was like, you need to pull this out. So that's another thing I did. Then I was like, okay, well, I don't like this subheadline. I don't like this subheadline. So please revise this. Suggest 5 other subheadlines for this. So then it suggested 5 other subheadlines for this. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go with one of these. I think I went with this one or something.
So you
Then,
basically summarized the story that you wanted to tell. You pasted the story into ChatGPT and you said, ChatGPT, suggest 5 headlines. And then it spit out headlines that you could then either copy paste them or they might inspire you to your own idea.
yeah. So what I did is I wrote out my first draft of the newsletter. Like I wrote it by hand. I read all the stories. I was like, picked whichever ones I wanted to feature, and then I wrote like these quick summaries. So I wrote all of the original content. Then I inputted it into ChatGPT and asked to polish it. So then it gave me a different version. And from there, I asked it to revise it. Like I revised hey, you forgot to mention this article, or this subheadline needs to be updated. Everyone
And
following so
Ann,
far?
can you hit the green dot in the top left of your screen, which will make your screen full screen and might make it a little bit easier to see? We've just had a couple of requests for that.
Is that better?
Yeah, thank you so much. Awesome.
Okay. So that's basically how I had ChatGPT revise the content, revise the subheadlines, and then help me suggest subject lines for this email.
So we had a question about, you just put in writing that you generated. Does ChatGPT now own that? Will they add that to their database? What happens?
Really good question. It is everything you input into ChatGPT's is now ChatGPT's. They are also crawling the website and pulling out everyone's information and all the language that they could possibly get. And so whether or not I put information that they might not have had access to because it would have been in a Google document otherwise. But yes, it is true that when you input your information into it, then that goes into ChatGPT's large language model, which that they can then use to train other content.
Thank you. And I also heard that though it's not necessarily using it directly right away, it is learning from it, but it's actually pulling from 2020 and older from the website when it's actually giving you information. So sometimes you can ask questions, it won't have the answer because it happened too recently. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, it used to say that ChatGPT was trained on content before September 2021 and does not have that information. It's recently been updated, so I don't think that's still the case, but that was the case for a very long time.
Do you know if there's some AI platforms that do not save your information, so they're more private?
There are a few platforms that do that. I can't think of one off the top of my head that's really good about that, but I know that there are a few other AI systems like that. I just don't know how good they are compared to ChatGPT. It's always like a trade-off because like the more private something is, that means the less data they have to train it, which means the less good the less helpful the output is.
Sorry, go ahead, Charla.
I was just gonna say, it looks like someone mentioned Claude. Claude might be one that does that.
I'm actually not familiar with that, so I'll check it out.
I heard that one either.
Okay. We got a really nice comment from Lindsay who says she uses ChatGPT for social media content and has interviewed business owners who do so. Sometimes it helps spark creative ideas. And as a writer, I'd rather get help with things that aren't in my wheelhouse, like social media captions, especially if I'm doing something like repurposing my newsletter content for social posts. Then I have more creative energy to use for things that are more personally meaningful to me. So if we wanted to take something that we have written out of our own creative brain. And we're like, hey, I think this essay I wrote would make a really good, like, series of Instagram posts or a series of Blue Sky posts or something like that. What's the process we would go through to make it do that for us? Because like right now, I'm fortunate enough to have a virtual assistant. I send her the blog and I say, hey, Claudia, can you please pull out some good quotes that we can put on social? Does ChatGPT do that kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's the next thing I do. I wrote, okay, so I took this newsletter, I had it polished up, I added, updated the subheadings and then added email subject lines and then come up with titles for it. Now, what did, let's see. Okay, I don't know exactly where it went, but let's pull up. Okay, so I often ask it after I do all this work, after I polish the newsletter, after I have it write a subject line, then I have it draft like a LinkedIn post sharing this newsletter. So this is what it drafted, and I just pick one social media thing. I use LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever. You can say anything, draft a Instagram post or a LinkedIn post sharing this. And you can say something like draft a LinkedIn post or an Instagram post sharing this blog or sharing this email or repurposing this blog post or repurposing this email. But so for this, I just did draft a LinkedIn post sharing this newsletter. And it came up with all of this. All of this I think was bad. So I was like, rewrite this to be no more than 4 sentences. So it did that. And then I had it draft a meta description for this post so that when I post it, it would get posted. This is the meta description that I would use on the website for SEO purposes. So that's exactly how you can repurpose the content and create an Instagram post or a LinkedIn post or a Twitter post, however you want to repurpose the content. You just have to ask it to say, hey, chat, you repurpose this post into an Instagram post or a LinkedIn post.
So, Anne, do you have more that you want to share with your screen, or shall we zap out of that and we have a couple more questions coming from the chat?
Well, does anyone have questions on this so far? Because I want to go slow because I know that a lot of this is very confusing. And so I'm going slow so that if people have questions, we can get to the questions.
Well,
otherwise, like I'm happy to talk
honestly,
more about different things.
what I'm seeing mostly about questions is that all of us as writers, we're worried about plagiarism. We're worried about, are we now plagiarizing everything else that's in the ChatGPT, database? And so I think we have a little bit of like philosophical stuff, and I think it's also useful to ask you about ManyChat as well, because that's something I've heard you speak about before, and I'd love to hear. Jill asks, is craft a meta post the appropriate prompt for the metadata language for SEO? Like what's the command you would give ChatGPT to get your metadata for SEO? And can you also tell us, what did I just say and what did that mean?
Okay. Yes, you can draft a, what did I put? What a meta, just, okay. Okay, so what did Allison just say? SEO is search engine optimization. It's basically making it clear to Google what your website is about so that Google can send people your way. So that, for example, if I'm a writer and I write about, I don't know, women and news, so that if there are other women out there being like, okay, I want to join a newsletter that shares news about women, I want to make sure that my website has the keywords women and news and newsletter in it so that anyone that is searching for content along those lines, I know Google knows to send those people my way. So that is SEO in a nutshell. It's all about making sure your website is the right descriptors to make sure that Google sends your audience your way. The way you do that is by titling the website in a couple different ways, but also web pages. You put each website page has a meta title and a meta description. So that's a short blurb about what this specific page is about, and it should contain the keywords that you want Google to send people your way for. So that is a meta title and a meta description. Does that make clear sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I
we-
asked,
Go ahead, Anne. Sorry.
oh, okay, go ahead.
Over to you.
Okay, this is the post. This is the exact prompt. Draft a meta description for this post. So that's what I asked Google to do. If you go to this website, to my website, powerhouse-strategy.com/resources, you'll get this ChatGPT guide, which has like prompts and hacks, all my favorite tips and tricks. And I'm pretty sure that has the meta description prompt and lots of other prompts. So you can find it there.
Fantastic. And Jeanette LeBlanc has posted a really interesting example. I read it as well. There is an essay on The Believer called Ghosts. Hey, Anne, will you tell us a little bit about ManyChat and share your screen? Because I'm going to pop up Ghosts because it's one of the things that I think we really need to be aware of as writers. It's a really fascinating piece. Thanks, Jeanette.
Okay.
Anne, tell us a little bit about ManyChat, because I know a lot of us are selling our books, we're selling our workshops, we're selling our editorial services, we're selling our music. Even a non-creative business can benefit from a sophisticated autoresponder. Tell us a bit about ManyChat.
ManyChat is this tool. Actually, let me back up. Basically, LinkedIn makes it, or Instagram makes it very hard to have people follow links because they don't want you to leave the platform. And so if you leave a link in an Instagram post, no one can click on it. And so it's kind of confusing. And so therefore people don't click on links because you can't click on them. You'd have to like select it and copy and paste it, and that's hard. So what ManyChat does is that it makes it easier to DM someone a link so that they can very easily click on it because there's really no other way for someone to click on a link. So what happens is if you do a post or you do a story and then you say, hey, DM me the word food. And anyone that DMs you the word food, or anyone that leaves the word food in the comment, they will automatically get a link to a freebie and that they can sign up to be on your newsletter. And that's how ManyChat works. It automates it so that you can have links sent and therefore drive people to your newsletter. And just backing up even beyond that, the way people sell books and develop their creative careers is they drive a lot of traffic to their newsletter sign up, either from being on media appearances, doing guest posts, having a really strong social media following, whatever that is, driving that traffic to their newsletter. And then once they're on their newsletter, sending great emails all the time, at least weekly, to engage and retain that and create like a cultivated group of fans. And so that's how you build your audience and build a sustainable career. And so ManyChat is this tool that helps people who are building their platform on Instagram to get links directly to the freebie, which is what gets people onto your newsletter link. So in this 3-stage process, ManyChat is this tool that's helpful for going from step 1 to step 2 of getting people from Instagram onto your newsletter by sending people basically the link directly to your newsletter.
So one of the ways that I've been working with ManyChat, and Rebecca, I see you've got a question, so I'm going to ask you to unmute and ask your question as well. One of the things that I've been doing is writing my own Insta post that is my own little mini essay, because I love writing mini essays on Instagram. And maybe at the bottom, it also says, I'll be teaching more about thus and such, comment workshop to get the link to register. And so someone can comment workshop and they'll get a private message that says, hey, I'm so glad you're interested in the workshop. And I will have written this message in advance and programmed it into ManyChat. So it is actually my voice. And then it gives them the link so that they can click through and register. So it's a way to be able to be responsive to people who have easy questions quickly. And especially if you're trying to funnel them into your mailing list or into something that you're offering. Hey, Rebecca, you looked like you had a question. Will you unmute and ask your question or make your comment? Because I admire your smarts and I feel like you have something to say.
I'm sorry. This is an incredible writer's bridge. I was going to say, a lot of us are so scared to speak up and say, I'm willing to try ChatGPT, or as a writer, I want to use tools. And the fact that you're doing this is going to help a lot of people, including myself. I've learned a lot, but I see a lot of people in general discussions, like a lot of different professions using ChatGPT. And what I worry about is that writers will be left behind, the ones that are too afraid to go on. We can use this in a way like you're showing us to improve, have tools to improve our skills, our craft, and our platforms. So I just wanted to thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Oh, you're very welcome. That's why I do what I do, because I don't want writers to get left behind.
Yeah, that's great. And also, I would say that there is some things worth being worried about whenever you're using a tool. There's lawsuits about people having their work used for ChatGPT without ever giving permission for that to be used. But that doesn't mean that you can't use it in a way that's safe and smart, for sure.
So conveniently, I can answer these questions because I'm also a lawyer. So, in terms of the copyright issues, I use this source called copy.ai, and I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Basically, it checks it checks anything that you get out of ChatGPT for plagiarism issues. I have never run anything through it that I have found to be plagiarized. And granted, I also start the input that I give ChatGPT is always my original written work. I've always done a written draft of it first. And none of that is obviously plagiarized. And so that could be why I've never seen anything plagiarized. But you don't want ChatGPT's original output. It's terrible. It's cheesy, it's stiff, it's awkward, it's so noticeable, and people can detect it. And people are becoming more and more wise to what does ChatGPT actually sound like. And as soon as they can tell that something is ChatGPT created, they automatically dismiss it. But if you start with your own output and ask ChatGPT for help to polish it, then it's a lot better, and you're unlikely to come up with plagiarism concerns. Now, in terms of whether ChatGPT is, scraping other people's content, and that's what the large language models do. They scrape the internet to pull out all of the content, all of the information, and then they take that to train ChatGPT so that it can develop the outputs that it does. There are lawsuits going out right now against ChatGPT for copyright violations. In all likelihood, there were copyright violations, but whether or not the courts decide that those copyright violations are so harmful to society is to be determined. There are a bunch of lawyers that think the courts are going to look at this and say, hey, you're right, these systems took a lot of information from the internet and took information from people without compensating them fairly, but that's really something society needs to do in order to advance and grow. And so therefore we're going to say it's okay for OpenAI to do this. And we saw that something similar in the Google Books case, where Google took all of the books and then put it online, and there was a similar lawsuit, but ultimately the courts ruled in Google's favor. And so I think there are plagiarism and copyright concerns, but whether or not the courts say that OpenAI needs to compensate any of the creators that they pulled information from, I'm really unsure whether they will do that.
Right. Do you think that, Jill asked this question, that ChatGPT will improve to the levels where it's undetectable that it's AI? Will it ever be not false sounding?
Yeah, I imagine it's going to get better. But ChatGPT, I really want to emphasize this, is only as good as the input. I don't think it's going to be if you ask it to, the great thing I think about ChatGPT is it frees up. I don't want to be writing email subject lines or blog post titles or I hate doing things like that. And so ChatGPT frees up all of my time to reduces the amount of time I have to spend on marketing and all these other things so that I can focus on what I like doing, which is writing. And I'm like, ChatGPT can't take away the core of what I do because yet, who knows if anything can change. But it can't right now take the core of what I do because I'm the one that does the thinking. I'm the one that does the writing, and I'm the one that actually does like putting all of these concepts together. So right now, ChatGPT can't do it. And as far as I can tell, it helps me become better at all of these marketing tasks that I don't want to do anymore.
That makes a lot of sense. So I want to share with you all because one of the crazy things is this wonderful essay at The Believer that's all about AI and writing with AI and what that's like. And I'll just read a little bit of it for you, and we'll also put the link in our YouTube archives. We'll put it in the comments of this, in the description of this video as well. By the way, there is a link to our archives with all of our past episodes in every email you get from us. So please feel free to prance on over to YouTube and you can catch up. Here, this author, who is Vahini Vara, she wanted to experiment with ChatGPT and see what happens. She says, I had always avoided writing about my sister's death. At first, in my reticence, I offered ChatGPT 3, which was an earlier version, only one brief, somewhat rote sentence about it. The AI matched my canned language, cliches abounded. But as I tried to write more honestly, the AI seemed to be doing the same. It made sense given that GPT-3 generates its own text based on the language it has been fed. Candor apparently begat candor. In the 9 stories below, I authored the sentences in bold and GPT-3 filled in the rest. Because it has not been edited, inconsistencies and untruths appear. My sister was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma when I was in my freshman year of high school and she was in her junior year. And then this is GPT from here. I had just started playing lacrosse and she was really excited for that. I don't think I really understood what Ewing sarcoma was. I just knew it was a type of cancer. And so she goes through this version and then she starts another version where, again, the bold text is the author. My sister was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma when I was in my freshman year of high school and she was in her junior year. I didn't understand then how serious a disease it was, but it was serious. She died 4 years later. I thought I would die too of grief, but I did not. And GPT continues, I think that's when I decided to become a doctor. I started a running streak when I was a high school senior to raise money for the Children's Cancer Society. I've run every day since. I've run through rain, heat, snow, and ice. I've run at my best. I've run to the point of exhaustion. I've run when I had a cold and when I was sick to my stomach. I've run in the dark. I've run in the daylight, in the moonlight, in the darkness of the moon. And I think you guys can hear where this passage here, it's not necessarily great because like moonlight and darkness of the moon sort of repeats, which is something I would call out as an editor. But if I was a writer interacting with ChatGPT, and if I was a runner, which as it turns out, this author was not, ChatGPT is just making it up, this would be a passage that I could then work on and revise and play with that idea of repetition with. We will drop the link to this essay, which goes on quite long, and she builds her part of the essay each time, putting in the things that are factual and letting GPT respond to the facts. It's really worth reading because it really shows how the creative process can be influenced by, but not dominated by or overcome by or feeling fake by interacting with AI. It's a really fascinating, fabulous essay. And she talks a lot about the process of it too. Anne, have you seen this essay before?
I actually haven't, so I would love to read it and feature it in my newsletter, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read you one last passage and then we'll pop back into some questions because I know, Charlotte, we've got some more questions in there. So the author writes, here I should conjure my sister for you. Here I should describe her so that you feel her absence as I do, so that you're made ghostly by it too. But though I'm a writer, I've never been able to conjure her. I remember the same small set of details. And the computer continues, her dark eyes, her long, thin fingers. But these are just the details that are universal to all sisters. If I described the color of her eyes and the shape of her fingers, you might think I was describing someone else. Even if you knew my sister, you might not recognize her in these details. Why is it that, though we look at our siblings so closely, we forget them so quickly? I highly recommend that you read the rest of this essay. It's really powerful.
That's great.
I think that the opportunity for ChatGPT to replace things like that is so far, I don't see it. Um, the type of emotional experiences that humans can describe, I just can't imagine ChatGPT. It can help polish language like an editor can, but I can't imagine it being able to describe that.
Yeah, and it really does need the author's input every time to be able to respond with anything at all. It really is. It's a lever. You only get the force out that you put in. It does not function on its own. The seesaw does not pump itself.
I would say it's also something, it's a good foil. Like someone asked about how fiction writers could use it. And, you can put in an idea you have for a story and you can get a very cliche response. And you'll be like, okay, well, that's the cliche way to do it. How can I do this different? And, we all have cliche impulses because we are also machines that take in information and stories and then spit them out again. And there's no original thought. So sometimes it's great to push yourself further than the machine. And, as another way of getting ideas.
The other thing, I think that's an underestimated aspect of ChatGPT. That it's so great for feedback. Like I honestly, like last night, I was pinging it at like 10 p.m., being like, I'm trying to develop some podcast ideas. Like which of these, help me develop some interesting concepts. Like what could I talk about? Who else am I going to talk to at 10 p.m. about this? There's no one in the world that wants to talk to me at 10 p.m. about this. And it's a really good brainstorming tool to say these are some of the different aspects. Like this is not already covered in like tons of podcasts, and maybe you should focus on these areas. It really helps you. I can see fiction writers using it to develop plot lines and develop concepts, even if they can't use it for their writing. And there are a lot of fiction novels out there, and not all of them are great. Some of
And
them are pretty routine. And ChatGPT write one of those novels? Probably.
Yeah.
And Barbara asks a good question too. How would a fiction writer use it for their marketing materials and blog posts? So they're not necessarily putting in a bunch of facts. I mean, would they use it to inspire topics? How would a fiction writer use it?
Okay, my philosophy on this, I strongly believe that there's not that much difference between a fiction writer and a nonfiction writer. Even fiction writers have to be nonfiction writers because you have to be getting your story, your personal story, or whatever message you have that you're trying to tell through your books out into the public. So, for example, I'm working with an author, and her books are a lot about female friendship. So, what should she be talking about? She should be talking about female friendships in different articles that she's writing for different publications. She should be talking about it on podcasts. She should be talking about it in different media forms. So, and even on her blog posts, they should be around the same concepts that she's writing about. So, yes, the books are fiction books, but the marketing is very nonfiction oriented and it's very similar to what a nonfiction author would do. And that means you can use ChatGPT to help you develop the pitches, help you develop the blog post titles, help you develop the emails and the email marketing strategy, all of that purpose, just like a nonfiction writer would do.
So, Anne, if we want to go and experiment with ChatGPT, can you tell us what would we do? Where do we go on the internet? How do we start interacting with it? What's that process like?
It's pretty easy. I would go straight to ChatGPT and start practicing with it. In terms of I'm not sure what type of content you all are producing, but ChatGPT can help you brainstorm ideas and help you develop different concepts. So you can just start practicing. It's learning ChatGPT is going to be a skill like learning how to type. I heard Trevor Noah say something like in a podcast. He said, maybe our GPTs are going to be more important than our resumes because it's going to be about how well we've trained a model like ChatGPT to be able to give output. And so it's a skill, just like typing, and you can learn it gradually and start practicing, and it's going to get better. I also provide lots of tips about it on my social media and on my newsletter. And so I'll be creating a lot of content about this, so you can follow me for all of my latest thinking about this. But those are two different ways to practice.
And Anne, do you offer a class or a course, or can you recommend some videos or something where we can learn more about how to use this if we're interested in trying it?
So if you go to powerhouse-strategy.com/resources, my guide, it includes a YouTube video, a link to a YouTube video where I show you some of my favorite tips and tricks for using it. It has like screenshots. And so that is helpful.
And I think that link that you are putting in, it goes to a 404 error message.
Is the last one, did I just put?
Yeah. And if you're interested in learning more about ManyChat, so a lot of you have seen Anne here in the Writers Bridge community before because she's been so awesome about answering people's questions in the chat about PR and publicity and platform. She recommended a podcast episode that is the surprising Instagram strategy that turns followers into paying clients. It's from a wedding planners podcast. Like apparently there is a whole business of wedding planners who are helping each other be good wedding planners and get
Wedding
business.
pros.
It's the Wedding Pro CEO. And I found that podcast episode very, very helpful. It's about 25 minutes. It's a very clear explanation for you to know whether or not you're interested in using ManyChat.
Yeah, super helpful. And this is a really good podcast about lots of business and digital strategy things. And the podcast is like geared toward wedding pros, but all of the advice is applicable to any online business owner and any creative. So I listen to it all the time, and it's very helpful.
Would you caution someone from posting like a whole chapter of their memoir in ChatGPT to get like themes or a summary or anything like that? What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
So I'm working with an author and developing his podcast pitches, like handling all of that for him. And so I didn't, I didn't put in his entire book chapters. I would definitely ask clients before I did that, like, are you comfortable with me inputting this into ChatGPT? On the one hand, ChatGPT will have all of your information that they can scrape. On the other hand, it'll help me to generate better output. But instead, what I did was like I pulled out all the content I could find about him online that was already available, and then I used that to help me develop pitches. So whether or not you want to do it, it's a trade-off. I personally think going toward the future, I think copyright is going to be less important than pieces that really stand out and go viral or that can grab attention. So I think attention is going to be more important than copyright. And so, that is to say you can grow your career by not plagiarizing, but using these tools to improve your writing so that it's not 1000% all your original work, but also it uses machine learning to improve all of our writing.
Denise asks a question in the chat. If self-publishing through Amazon KDP, you have to certify that you did not use AI to write your book, whether fiction or nonfiction. And I know Amazon made that rule because weird AI books were being popped up like 100 books a day from one person, just as a straight up money grab. Denise wants to know, is it still possible to use ChatGPT in a way that the writer can honestly say, I did not use AI to write this book?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is just use it as an editor, like do all of the original writing as much as possible, and don't have ChatGPT write it. And also ChatGPT doesn't help. You have to go paragraph by paragraph. It's basically helpful with like 250 words at a time. You can't do like an entire book or an entire chapter. And yeah, you can go through it, but like it's going to take a lot of time to go chapter by chapter or paragraph by paragraph to improve the entire book.
And
Yeah.
I want to draw a parallel here too. So I'm working on a new book right now myself that's going to be a thriller, and I very much want it to be a sellable thriller. And so one of the things I did was I analyzed another writer's thriller that I found very compelling, and I went through scene by scene and I labeled scenes in my Scrivener with labels like the accomplice confesses and it appears that all is lost. The police move in and begin the investigation. The couple's relationship starts to fall apart. They make a first public appearance. Where I have these almost like Mad Libs topics to fill in myself with my own writing and my own information, but I'm borrowing the structure from another writer to get me started and to get me going and to understand where I need this book to go. I may not follow that structure exactly, but knowing when I'm deviating from it and when I'm using it is helping me move forward in the book. And I'm doing it myself, but I could imagine asking AI to do that too and saying, hey, analyze this chapter for me. Tell me what's functionally going on. And then I can write something that I think responds or reacts to that.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say the difference between writing with ChatGPT when it comes to publishing on Amazon and having it help you with editing is that you can actually you can put a sentence of a story in ChatGPT and say, what happens next? And it will write you what it imagines happens next, right? So it's going to give you some content. That's different than saying, here is a sentence, polish it, make it look, sound better or whatnot. Or here's a title to a chapter, make it a catchier title. So that's the difference. Like, it will actually sputter out information that is just making up as well, which is
Yeah,
We're
and
going to
be
ask,
very-
sorry, go ahead, Ann.
Oh, and be very suspicious of that type of output. It's just probably not very good.
right.
Let's ask one last question here before we get into our closing thing. Oh, and also Tracy says, this is how many writers learn and have learned for centuries. Where do we draw the line when we describe originality? Not even Shakespeare came up with his own plots. Diana asks, what will be the value of intellectual property in the future? Are we seeing copyrights no longer be valued? Is this going to diminish creative careers if we've got so much plagiarism going on?
I don't think it's gonna diminish creative careers. In fact, I think the internet provides a unique opportunity for creatives to do things that they previously never could have because there was just no way to find that audience, or it was like gate capped and it was very hard. But now people have, because of the internet, the amount of creatives that we're seeing is amazing. Like, that's why we have a creator economy, and that's something that we never saw before. So I think the internet is really democratizing that. In terms of copyrights, I think we're going to use tools like ChatGPT to varying extents, and I think it's going to be better. So people are going to use them more and more in terms of producing content. And so it seems to me that copyrights are going to become less important. It's more about producing great work that's going to go viral or that's going to grab people's attention. But that is just my prediction on it. And I don't have a crystal ball about these things, so I don't know.
So
I
in
can tell
just
you how
a
to use
minute,
ChatGPT, but
so
I
in just a
can't
minute,
talk
we are
about.
going to share with all of you our top tips for what you can do right now to move your career forward today with or without AI. We will drop into the chat again Ann's link where you can check out free resources to make author marketing easier, including a free ChatGPT guide. And we urge you also check out that podcast about ManyChat. It's a really interesting, easy to process read. Coming up next month, we'll be talking to podcasters. Should you be podcasting as a writer and how? And feel free to forward the email to a writer friend. All of our archives are now going up on YouTube. Feel free to share that. We do hope that you'll join us for our next episode on March 26th. So 3 things that you can do today. Charla, what can we do today to move forward with AI or without it in our writing career?
Well, I don't know if I have any suggestions on how to move forward, but I do think it's good that we're thinking about it. And I would say there's some valid concerns about our consumer appetites for new technology without proper, policies and restrictions and considerations. Don't just throw your magnum opus into ChatGPT, or in that case, save or publish anywhere that you don't have control over the content, or another entity does, of your most precious content, at least. Support policies that protect artists and their work. And if you're comfortable with the idea, consider playing around with ChatGPT or, as a tool just to see if it can make your life a little bit easier. But, be smart, be flexible, and be open.
Anne, what's your top tip today?
Play around and practice with ChatGPT. It's a skill, and you're going to gradually get better. Like Charlotte said, don't just put in your novel, but if you're doing email subject lines, if you're doing blog post ideas, whatever type of content that you're producing, and you should always be producing content along with your work, use ChatGPT to refine that content.
Absolutely. As writers, our voices are what we have that is unique. And while we'll see what happens with ChatGPT in the future, right now, it occupies pretty much the same space as, oh no, somebody else wrote a memoir about having problems with their mother. Does that mean that mine is now worthless? It is never the topic that makes your work unique. It is always your voice and the way you present your story. ChatGPT is one tool among many. It may be useful for you, it may not be, but it's worth knowing that it exists. It's worth checking it out. It's worth seeing if it has something to offer you that might save you time and energy on marketing and social media so that you can spend it developing your voice and writing your beautiful, unique book that only you can write. Thank you so much, Anne, for being here today. We're so glad you were able to take this time for us, and we're so glad to have you in the Writers Bridge community. Remember, everybody, the replay will pop up on YouTube. We no longer send a day after email. We just assume you're going to head on over to YouTube. The link is in both emails that you already got. Please feel free to unmute yourselves for a joyful goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Anne.
Bye.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you,
Great
Anne.
job.
Nice
Thanks.
seeing you, Rebecca.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.